Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology, what the implications are for our world, and how we can look at Vedic astrology as a predictive tool which can help our lives and help us understand our world. If you want to contact me for a reading, please do so, or for lessons. My number is 508 525 0001. Again, that's 508 525 0001. You can text me at that address or email me at Gary Gomes, GARYGOMES at gmail.com. So I will have some guests coming pretty soon. I will upgrade the video hopefully by next weekend, although I know it's been next weekend for a few weeks running, but such is life. So I'm going to share the screen with you right now. And somebody had asked me to look and say what the ramifications were for the next 18 years for Rahu and Ketu. And I think that's probably not quite what was meant, but I'm going to look at the next um, 18 months for Rahu and Ketu just quickly. Then I will look at the astrology for the week, how it's going to affect everyone. And then I'll look at your individual sun signs. Then I'll look at the astrocartography map and where we might expect things to go from here. So as I started this morning with coming on around 10 o'clock, then the internet cut me off. And what I would like to do is I'll start from this particular time. And we can see right here Rahu is leaving Aries. It's about to move into Pisces. And Ketu's about to leave Libra and move into Virgo. Okay, well, what do those two things do? Rahu is connected with religion, I'm sorry, with disruption, um, revision, discontent, and also to a certain extent with really strongly held belief systems. So essentially, we can expect to see the Arab-Israeli, I'm sorry, not the Arab-Israeli war, the Israeli war is, I think, the start of a long, several outbreaks connected with spiritual life and connected with spiritual beliefs that we'll see over the next year and a half. I think also because Ketu is in Virgo, we'll see problems connected with health pop up, more terrorist attacks, and that's mainly because of Ketu's link with Virgo being a critical transition point. So Rahu and Ketu are in change, are in signs connected with fluctuations or in between change and stability. And one thing you will see, I think, from this particular transition is a lot more people being willing to fight over belief systems. Now, this isn't something that we've never seen before. But the last time we had Rahu and Ketu in these particular signs were in 2000, excuse me, 2000 and, I'm sorry, yes, 2004 and between 2004 and 2005, roughly. So that consisted of several small scale, what I would call small scale wars. They were very significant, but they were small scale wars. Uh, and Ketu in Virgo, 2004, 2005, I can't think of any major disease outbreaks. But I do find it interesting that the last time Rahu and Ketu um, were conjoined in these two particular signs. We had, or in Aries and Libra, and even before that in Scorpio and Taurus, we had a panic connected um, with the arresting of civil rights, with countries that had previously been rather tolerant of different belief systems starting to crack down on them. Excuse me. So we had a lot of conflicts in places like France, um, England, uh, and Iraq and Syria, all based off of fear of terrorism. And so the trigger this time wasn't fear of terrorism, or not so much, but it was fear of disinformation. So we were afraid that people weren't communicating the truth. So it's that Rahu Moon conjunction that came into effect, that came into play. And what you'll see over the next couple of years is there will be revelations about people being arrested, people being confined because of belief systems. There's already an infamous case in England about a man being jailed because he said he would be willing to help um, or aid a group that was planning to take down some cameras. So it really wasn't even, I'm trying to think of a way to put it. It really wasn't even a palpable threat, but his house was invaded and he was arrested for threatening to engage in illegal activities. And I've seen the language, and the language wasn't all that intimidating. But I think you're going to see that kind of overreaction and also sort of a break and a questioning of a lot of the actions that have taken place over the past, 4 to 5 years. The other thing that concerns me a little bit is that we had an ongoing conflict in 2004 under then President Bush. And it does seem to be tilting in that direction. So one of my colleagues many years ago pointed out that we don't like to change presidents when we're in the middle of a war. And that may be one way to ensure the current president stays in power. I don't know. I'm just saying that was an observation that was made. I am not accusing anybody of doing anything illegal or or uh, trying to encourage war. But this Jupiter Moon conjunction, Jupiter Rahu conjunction, excuse me, and the Mars Ketu conjunction does set up people's tempers for a lot of activity. The thing that's missing is that Jupiter isn't really strong. It's strong enough in the sign, but it isn't really as strong as it was when the invasion of Iraq took place. And I think there'll be less sympathy or less tolerance for that, at least over the next 3 to 4 years, than there had been before. So essentially, these are like little echoes, so we can look at different reference points from the past and see where things are heading. In terms of the impact of Rahu, though, on Pisces, you have heard a lot of dogma coming up about, or a lot of rhetoric coming up about, who's really telling the truth, who's lying about this, so there's this battle over conviction. There's this battle over which side is being truthful to you and which side is lying to you and which side is trying to subvert the systems of government in which countries. And I think it's always fascinating to me that the ones who so again, this is something I'm not taking sides about, but it's always fascinating as how the until there's a flip, until there's a change, the existing governments will always maintain they're telling the truth and the absolute truth. And the people who are outside of power are always painted as telling lies. So I'm not saying that one is correct and one is not correct. It's just that's the way I've observed it. This Mars Mercury Ketu conjunction gives that ability to stretch the truth or make up stories out of whole cloth. From the beginning, but it is interesting to me that Ketu is about to leave sign. So within about a month, I used the true nodes, the mean nodes. It'll leave Virgo it'll leave Libra and go into Virgo in around November 1st. I use the true nodes, and if the true nodes, so Rahu will enter Pisces on November 1st, Ketu will enter Virgo on November 1st, and we use the mean node. I use true nodes, and that means we're going to have about a month more of what I would call fanatical I ideological fighting. Now, again, this isn't to say that a lot of events around the world aren't happening. Obviously, Israel did get attacked by Hamas. Israel, depending on where you sit on this, Hamas started this current endeavor. I can't stress that enough. But there is a lot of confusion on both sides as to who is telling the truth, just based upon the chart itself. So I'm not taking sides on who's telling the truth. Israel does have a right to defend itself. I'm gonna repeat that over and over again because I don't think there's any doubt in my mind about that. I don't um, come down on the sides of people who kidnap other individuals and who escort them off, especially innocent civilians. So it's that's sort of like a bottom line decision for me. But I'm not an expert on the Middle East. I'm far from it, and I know the political situation is extremely complicated out there. But I also know the United States has interfered a great deal through the years, really since the 1970s, I would say, was like the start. I mean, it was actually before then, but the United States was our active participation, especially in countries like Iran. And I, I think one of the things that happens here is the United States has, and and most of the Western countries have some karma connected with that part of the world. Jupiter's aspecting Venus. Um, there is an element of alignment with Israel in the United States, which I think is fine. I'm not opposed to that at all. But I find it fascinating that we have a lot of panic happening um, just in terms of entertainment's reaction, in terms of political reaction. Excuse me, and even in terms of academic reaction to this, because we have both Jupiter and Venus afflicted by Saturn. So this Saturn aspect on Jupiter, essentially, and Saturn aspect on Venus, essentially uh, favors the group that's considered to be the underdog, or the group is considered to be um, under attack more often. So again, like I said, I'm not taking sides. It's one of those things we had sort of a panic reaction, both internationally and nationally. And I think one of the things is I'm just hoping for the panic to go away a little bit in November and towards the end of November, and so people can think rationally about this situation and can think intelligently and can think in terms of uh, essentially resolving the situation. Jupiter is aspecting Mars, is aspecting Sun, which represents governments, and is aspecting Mercury. So this particular combination is, as I noted another Vedic astrologer notices, this is not an extraordinary combination, but unusual because the nodes are involved. And this does tend to flare up warlike activities. Jupiter aspect of Mars tends to make people a little bit less prudent than they normally are. So that's my concern. Mars will move out of this sign in about a month's time. It'll move into Scorpio, and Saturn will go direct around November 15th, which should give us a little bit more clear thinking about how to achieve peace as opposed to how to get payback. And again, keep in mind, the payback isn't only connected with these particular with relations between these individuals. There are all sorts of innocent people getting killed. Um, and I haven't spoken about Ukraine, but I find it fascinating that Ukraine has gone off the map largely as we discuss Israel. And if I look, I looked at the Ukraine and the U.S. and Russia's maps or charts last year, and I felt the Ukraine couldn't hold out. I just, this was just my judgment at the time. So again, we'll see what happens eventually. But there does seem to be an alignment of various countries um, that between the BRICS economic activity and uh, these current activities. BRICS is for those of you who don't know, BRICS is a union of economic interests, um, including Brazil, Russia, uh, India, uh, China, North Korea, uh, and they form sort of like an economic pact. India, too, I believe, is involved in the BRICS countries. And India is probably actually the country with the most promise out of all those countries right now. China is still powerful. It's still an important economic influence, but um, its economic growth seems to be stymied right now. So I think one of the things we'll see over the next few years is not necessarily a war, but more of more trade disputes happening between that bloc of nations, and also um, the European Union, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Japan. And right now, the BRICS, I believe the BRICS group is the largest economic group in the world right now. I believe it is. Uh, and that's mainly due to India um, and China as part of a a bloc that's working together. And I think South Africa recently joined too, if I'm not mistaken. So, so essentially, you have these groups that are trying to gain some kind of independence, and that will cause some kinds of trade wars over the next few years, some kinds of currency wars. Virgo is really essentially the sign connected with currency because it's an accounting sign. So that Ketu will cause some disruption in Virgo over the next year and a half. It'll also cause some political disruption over the next year and a half. So again, I think we can expect to see a political change in 2024. However, I don't necessarily think it's going to be a current or former president taking power, and maybe an entirely different individual in the United States. And you'll also see changes in government in the UK, um, France, I think, Canada, I think, and Japan, I think, as well. Okay. So there'll be a lot of what I would call fluctuation or instability, or a lot of shifting of alliances over the next year or so. So essentially, again, wars, as as a colleague of mine pointed out, wars will break out. That's not really such a big surprise. Azerbaijan has been attacking Armenia for months now, and that just doesn't show up on the news because they're smaller countries. They really don't interest the United States all that much. So we're not hearing about that unless you're kind of an international news junkie. And there are also um, some attacks taking place in Syria. I heard today the United States is bombing Iran bases, but the United States is particularly vulnerable in Syria. So it's really going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few months. And the other thing is, the United States is, you know, heavily armed for sure, but there have been certain tactical weapons we've been giving to Ukraine, um, which we can't replace right away. Certain of our jets, and so we would get those from South Korea, as opposed to manufacturing them ourselves. So this is kind of a fascinating situation that we find ourselves in right now. So everything is just a little bit unstable, a little bit wobbly, and that shows up more strongly as the nodes um, move between the signs. So I'm not predicting any major catastrophes, but if Ketu is entering Virgo, there will probably be more earthquakes. Rahu entering Pisces, more sea disasters, more water disasters, more hurricanes, and I think you'll start to see those like flooding, especially around next April. Earthquakes, maybe sooner than that, maybe between November and December, as K2 enters an Earth sign. So this looks like an interesting year and a half ahead for us. But again, I don't think there's a real need to panic. But the one thing I am worried about, though, is a recession pretty much unlike anything we've seen over the past 50 years or so. And I'm not talking about a Great Depression. That's really not the idea. I'm talking about a high employment or a low unemployment recession, uh, in which the economy will seem to be sliding backwards. Eventually, it will hit people and lay them off in jobs. But initially, uh, just recently, the economy grew at a staggering pace this summertime. But part of that was inflation driven, and part of that was we can't find workers who work in lower paid jobs right now. So I think one of the things we're going to see over the next few months is there'll be a real crisis in certain types of jobs that we need workers for. So this won't be just trades; it'll be, more menial jobs like, with apologies to people who work in restaurants, like waiters and waitresses and cooks. Those aren't menial jobs; they're service jobs. Excuse me for being so stupid. But basically, um, yeah, it looks like it's going to be kind of an interesting period. Saturn aspecting Jupiter without Rahu supporting Jupiter. That doesn't look like a good sign for economic recovery. Although, I mean, on the plus side, Jupiter is unobstructed in Taurus over the after roughly after April of next year, so that's a good sign. But the nodes themselves are going to be kind of um, doing their job. So right now, what we had was essentially what we had recently, or where we're still having, is arguments over what's correct information and what's incorrect information. Over the next few years, couple of years, we'll have arguments over what's correct ideology and what's incorrect ideology. which should be more interesting. Okay, so the information won't be, it won't be the information that'll be under threat, although we could sort of see this coming. It will be the belief system that's under attack. Um, and I find that kind of interesting. So we're going to see some um, not less extreme, but more extreme, uh, and maybe ultimately leading to changes in governments in a lot of countries around the world about 2 years from now. All right. So, and what I mean by governments is governmental structures. So this will be really interesting to watch. The other thing is we have what's going on right now is that Saturn in Aquarius is, so I've already kind of beaten the justice system thing to death, but that Saturn in Aquarius aspecting Jupiter and Venus will sort of make divisions in income bigger. There'll be a shift in that probably after around April or so. But I'm still seeing a shift more towards the rich than towards the poor uh, internationally. So that's not going to go away anytime soon. I'm trying to clear up my voice a little bit. I've been talking a little bit too much today. So let's go to the individual signs and explore those a little bit, have a little bit of fun with those. So we have Rahu and Jupiter and Moon. So I don't want to get you depressed. I think anytime the nodes go through the mutable signs like Pisces and Virgo, there are changes. There are actually positive changes that come about. And Jupiter will enter Cancer in about 3 years. You'll see some better movement towards more equity, but I think inevitably, I don't think it's going to be the end of democracy as we know it, but I also think that just because of the way brains are changing because of all this communication we have, there'll be less. Uh, the PowerPoints in society are kind of twisted right now. They're kind of going through a change, and it's especially true because of media. And I think one of the things is that means we'll be doing things very differently moving forward than we have over the past 200 years or so, at least in the United States. And a lot of countries and cultures around the world will be similarly affected. So I think it's kind of interesting to be at this particular point in history because it is kind of a game changer. So basically things like greed and resentment and territoriality won't disappear, but there will be increasing interest in exploring different belief systems and different concepts. So let's go over here to, and maybe even different ways of making a living. Okay. So going over here, let's look at Aries. Aries is still concerned about home life, a little bit obsessed with home life. Jupiter, the Lord of the ninth house, is in the first house. So there'll be a strong feeling that a strong element of upset or concern about economic stability. Relationship life will be a little bit down. One of the good things about this combination, which I didn't mention before, was the Sun and Venus exchange signs. So that'll keep existing structures in place, even though there's a lot of pressure to move them right now. And Mars is in Libra, along with Mercury and Ketu. So this gives sort of like a combative element in relationship life to Aries. For we have Saturn aspecting Venus, so this means there won't be a lot of change in relationship status, although some people will feel very, very tired of being in the same relationship, but friendships won't be satisfying either. Some good potential for gain through income, and I think this particular chart is actually fairly good for economic success for Aries. For Taurus, this would be May 15th to June 15th. Venus is in the fourth house, so there's a lot of focus on home. Again, this sign has to be careful about family members getting sick, especially because of being run down or being distressed. There can be some arguments over repairs. Seventh house Lord is Mars. The Lord of the seventh house is in the sixth house. So again, there'll be more fights with relationship partners. Saturn's in the 10th house, a lot of focus on work and expansion of work life, and a lot of expenses for Taurus. Obviously, this really won't abate until Rahu changes signs within the month. Gemini has Mercury in the fifth house, along with Mars, Sun, and Ketu. So there's going to be a lot of focus on kids, on your children. But also, this is a very creative combination. So a lot of folks will have a lot of creative impulses. They won't want to rock the boat too much, especially kids. Kids may be a little bit untruthful, though. And romantic affairs, it's really a good idea to stay out of any romantic involvements for at least the next couple of months. I know I've been saying that a lot. I don't want to be a spoiled sport, but it's really basically true. Jupiter is in the 11th house, so relationship partners will focus a lot on friendships. Friendships can't quite be trusted for about another month. And there'll be a lot of focus on income for this chart. So there'll be worry about money coming in, but money will come in. For Cancer, Cancer has a lot of anxiety about career life, a lot of anxiety about, excuse me, about health. There will be some interest in getting operations done for this rising sign. Venus is in the second house, so this particular combination, this sign should probably watch out for its eyesight. Not that anybody's going to get blinded, but there is a possibility. Now, again, if somebody's going to get surgery for their eyes, this is probably a good time to do it because of Ketu with the Sun and Venus in the second house. So this will actually be a relatively, not right now, but after the beginning of the month. The other thing is, one, two, and by the way, I'm actually recording this on October 28th, so just to let you know. For this particular sign, some money coming in, which is a good thing. But again, some unhappiness in relationship life. And again, some disappointment in luck. But this won't last long. Rahu is going to change signs, or it's in the process of changing signs. So luck should improve for this sign. For Leo, Leo gives stability in marriage. Relationship partner will be a little bit depressed, but again, not a bad combination. Sun, Mars, and Mercury are in the third house with Ketu. That tends to give better understanding of desires, relationship partners, and also, at least from this chart, a lot of the person's own desires are better understood, but they'll be obstructed just for the time being because of Saturn aspecting the first. And Saturn aspects the moon in this chart, so it aspects the ninth house. And I think you'll see this is actually a good combination because it's a Raj Yoga. It creates kind of a Raj Yoga for the chart. So it'll give a lack of fewer losses, but also expenses connected with education and also some um, concern about financial security. For Virgo has the Lord of the first house and the second house, so this uh, sign will be very concerned with money, very concerned with financial security. Money will tend to bleed out of it, or especially to the government. And Saturn is in the sixth house, so there seems to be a struggle in getting things organized or finalized. Moon and Jupiter are in the eighth house, a lot of interest or obsession with occult or metaphysical knowledge. Venus in the 12th, good for savings, actually. So this actually puts a little bit of a damper on the expenditures connected with the government. For Libra has Mars, Sun, Mercury, and Ketu in the first house. So there's a lot of activity happening between Libra and Aries. So that'll make this sign more concerned with wealth, more concerned with doing the right thing, more concerned with gains. So this is sort of a combination for wealth for this chart, but also expenses, unexpected expenses because of Ketu. And Saturn sits in the fifth, so anything this sign does in terms of work, in terms of academics, will be rewarded handsomely. Relationship life, a little bit of uncertainty about whether or not the person should get into a relationship or stay out of one. Um, I wouldn't change anything about your relationship life right now. Okay. The other signs we have right here, you have one, two. So largely Venus in the 11th house promises gain for this particular sign this month. So that's not bad. For Scorpio has the Lord of the first in the 12th house, along with the Sun, along with Mercury. So it'll give expenses, a lot of expenses to Scorpio. A lot of travel too. Doesn't necessarily just give expenses. Some difficulties at home life or feeling a little bit unhappy or a little bit isolated. There are also some indications of some of the sign's allies won't be all that friendly to it. There'll be a lot of competition uh, for this sign. And finally, as we get over here to Venus, a lot of love connected with career, a lot of travel connected with career. For Sagittarius's first lord is in the fifth house. So this gives a lot of financial growth, possibly a lot of creativity. Just watch out for get rich quick schemes and also not a good time to invest. I would wait until the end of November to invest. Saturn is aspecting the sign. I'd probably wait until April to invest in anything, to be honest with you. But Saturn's aspecting Jupiter, and so it will give, if you're interested in solid or conservative investments, that's fine. But very speculative ones, I would stay away from them. And let's see, so it's not time to get back into crypto. Okay. Venus is in the ninth house. Sun, Mars, Mercury, and Ketu are in the 11th house. So good for gains through regular work or through family members. Capricorn has Saturn in the second house. So there's a lot of concern with security of this sign, some fear of falling backwards. Saturn's aspecting the fourth house, which can give the sign some fear about security of the home. Venus is in the eighth house. This can actually give increased windfalls or financial security to the sign. And Sun, Mars, Mercury, and Ketu will give good career growth to this sign. Unexpected career opportunities. For Aquarius, Saturn sits in the first house. It aspects the moon. This sign should attain some fame or recognition this month. Venus also aspects the sign, so there'll be a lot of attraction to the sign this month. And finally, as we go over here to the moon and Jupiter, we see a lot of courage in pursuing goals and financial goals and creative goals. Sun, Mars, Mercury, and Ketu are in the ninth house. So again, somewhat of a good time for meeting new relationship partners. But again, like I said, I just think the chart's generally a little bit hazardous for relationship decisions. Aquarius is pretty much the only sign that makes out well during this particular combination, but its judgment about what it wants may be clouded until the end of November. Finally, Pisces has Moon, Jupiter in the second house. So there'll be some anxiety or upset or concern about money. Venus is in the sixth house. Watch out for congestion problems. Venus rules the eighth house. So again, take any signs of illness, especially cold-related illnesses, very seriously. And Saturn's in the 12th house. So this could indicate some confinement or inability to stretch out. But this sign will be very sociable this month. I mean, the good thing about this is it'll be very sociable, but it'll feel a little bit lonely. So this isn't necessarily a bad placement, but with Saturn aspecting the Lord of the First in this sign, there'll be a little bit of a feeling of not being able to express yourself freely. So let's go over to the time and space map. So this is where we can see where there are some potential problems. So there's some panic to the west of the United States, maybe in Alaska, maybe towards Hawaii. Some fraud, definitely towards Hawaii. It shows up very strongly. And here, there's a line I can't quite see, and then I shrink the map just a little bit. Oh, it's a Venus line. So Venus, yes. So Hawaii's kind of isolated right now. It's kind of fending for itself right now. Some definite problems in Canada, especially in terms of control, and especially in terms of trying to. Some of the stories I've heard coming out of Canada lately are kind of fascinating, and I like Canada, but basically there have been some stories about freezing bank accounts um, and I won't really say repressive outright, but more governmental control, more governmental um, tightening than we're used to seeing in that country. There's a Saturn and Venus line happening um, between Mexico, Texas, up through Michigan, and down through Ohio and Georgia. So I think we're going to see, and also hitting Nicaragua. So a lot of this has to do, at least as far as I can tell, with immigration patterns hitting and becoming really very difficult in the United States. The other thing is, so not to be um, a one note person, there could be some economic worsening in East Texas, Louisiana, up through Oklahoma, up through Michigan. So you can see some economic tightening. And this particular part of the country will be hit hardest first. Okay. if we do get a downturn in this particular part of Mexico and Central America, will get hit pretty strongly. Also, I don't think Ecuador and Peru are going to make out all that well either. As we go over here, there's a Rahu line going down the east coast of, or close to the east coast of the United States. And also there are some Moon, Sun, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter lines hitting in eastern Brazil. So this will give Brazil and Guyana uh, some kinds of economic panic. Is that a Rahu or Saturn line? That's a Rahu line. Economic panic and some outright rebellion uh, down in this part of Brazil. Iceland has a Saturn line running through it, so does the Ivory Coast and parts of Western Africa. And so does England. England is sandwiched. England, Spain, Portugal, and um, Morocco and Algeria are sort of sandwiched between this Saturn and Venus line, which to me says economic slowdown. So in addition to the other problems that France is going through, um, it'll see some economic um, inactivity. As a matter of fact, Europe overall and Northern Africa, all the way down through South Africa, I think we'll tend to see economic slowdowns. Again, nothing to panic about right away. It's just more of something that's happening right now. There is a Rahu line running through Turkey, uh, very close. Yeah, right through Israel and right through um, or close to Sudan and Egypt and through Ethiopia and down through, I believe it's Mozambique over here. I probably got that screwed up. But and there's a Moon Rahu Jupiter line over here near Ukraine and Russia. And I think we're not going to see Ukraine last for that many more months, to be honest. I could be wrong about this. Obviously, anybody could be wrong about this, but there's a Saturn line hitting right here, and that kind of indicates they run out of steam. The other parts of the world I'm worried about are Iran, and Iran may get a little bit pumped up over the next few weeks because of what's happening in Israel um, and because of its own internal problems. Iran has a lot of internal problems right now, despite the fact that it's a large economy. It has a lot of problems, um, a lot of social problems that have popped up over the past few years. And this can give them an excuse to focus on the enemy as opposed to its internal problems. And so is Saudi Arabia, by the way. So the Saudis and the Iranians are talking to each other right now. United Arab Emirates and Qatar are trying to broker peace. So this may be the Jupiter line may be going through Qatar. So I think it's one of those interesting times in which Jupiter can offer some hope, but also there's some anxiety because it isn't strong enough right now to do that. The Saturn line runs all the way down through Pakistan and Afghanistan into northwestern India and down by Bombay, Calcutta. And I think you'll see some economic slowdown in that part of India. Again, not significant. There's a Venus line running through near Bengal and Bangladesh. And you'll see, I think, some flooding activity in Bangladesh. Let's see now. We have other lines running through here. One of the interesting things we see about this map, as opposed to earlier maps I've looked at, is because a lot of the planets are clustered and closely aspecting each other, a lot of the lines are concentrating their energy in certain areas of the world. So these lines right here are kind of critical lines. Over here, and over here. Okay, these are kind of very important, especially when Saturn gets involved. Venus and Saturn does tend to give, like I said, some economic slowdown, and it's also some problems with the courts. China has had China's between a Rahu and a Venus line, so there's some, and so is essentially Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, um, Vietnam, and Malay, and Indonesia, at least Western Indonesia. And so those areas are going to hit hard economically. Philippines, even parts of Japan over here. So this entire area has this large Venus Rahu enclosure, and also um, the sun. So the governments are weak right now. The governments are weak in pretty much in Borneo. Uh, I'm sorry, not Borneo. Uh, Guinea and Australia. And there were some scandals connected with the governments in those parts of the world, and some lack of solidity in them right now. As we go over to New Zealand is finally getting hit by a Saturn line. So it doesn't necessarily mean that New Zealand's going to collapse, but it'll certainly slow down. So we're seeing a lot of slowing activity, which will actually start to become more obvious after Saturn goes direct around mid-November. All right, so that's it for this week. I thank you all very much for watching. I love you all. Don't look upon these challenging combinations as bad things. There are opportunities for growth. There are opportunities for new activities, and there are activities to help you identify new resources for yourself. So you're not helpless in the world, not by any stretch of the imagination. That's it for this week. I'll see you next week, and God bless every one of you. Okay? Bye-bye now. Oh, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you very much. And comment, please.